If you clicked on this video, there's a really good chance that you are thinking maybe you don't want to work for these people anymore. You're thinking maybe, just maybe, there's an option out there that doesn't include you being an employee and has more freedoms. Everyone around you might be saying, no, no, that can't be true. That's not possible. You can't get ahead. You can't get away from being an employee. Well, I'm here to tell you that they're wrong. And by the end of our time together, you'll say the same thing. Okay, I'm going to take you to Chicago in 2010. I'd moved there for what I thought would be a stable IT job opportunity. And by April Fool's Day of 2011, something weird happened. They chose not to renew my contract. Now, you might think that's kind of a cruel joke, and it almost was. But here's the thing. I was planning to leave anyway. I just didn't want to do it on April 1st because, well, I thought at first nobody would believe me, but I guess it turned out the other way. See, I'd recently read 48 Days to the Work You Love by Dan Miller, and it opened my eyes to something way bigger. I'll confess that I already had good interviews with Citrix Consulting and a company that held contracts for their bench consultants. I've been independent ever since, and I'm about to show you why this might be the best career move you never considered. Sure, it's not for everyone, but I'm willing to bet that you've been thinking about it. If you're sitting in that cubicle right now, feeling stuck, wondering if there's more to your IT career than salary caps and like corporate politics kind of stuff, this is for you. What I'm about to share isn't just theory. It's like 14 plus years of real experience, including the mistakes that cost me thousands and these insights that made me more money, gave me more freedom than I ever had as an employee. So by the end of this video, you will not only know more about this world of consulting and working for yourself, but you'll also see why the more I've learned over the years, I've been able to command some pretty impressive hourly rates and contracts that you'll be able to decide if this is the right path for you or not. Now, please note, this is not financial or career advice, and everyone's situation is different. If you want to discuss your specific situation, that is something that I do make available to those that are ready to take action. More on that later. Now, let's talk about understanding why someone would choose to go independent or work for themselves. Let me be direct about something most people just aren't going to tell you. Employment security in IT, and this is all of IT, not just like some of the ways I've been working, is now a myth. Employment security in IT is now a myth. I don't care how stable your company seems or how good your performance reviews are, or if you work for the government. Layoffs, acquisition, budget cuts, outsourcing, they happen to good people at solid companies every single day. The security you think you have, it's an illusion. But here's what's interesting. Many IT professionals who go independent aren't really independent at all. They're still employees, just with a different company that sells their services to other customers. They still have bosses, they still follow someone else's schedule, and they still can't say no to projects that like drain their soul. That's not independence per se, but I will say that it is a good way to start, but let's not jump ahead. So first off, what does it mean to be independent? It means you talk with your hands. I'm kidding. Briefly, it means that the government considers you to be self-employed. You no longer have an employment contract, but you'll have a series of service contracts that you can agree to or not. The benefit there is having the power to say no. No to toxic clients. No to projects that don't align with you and your goals. No to working weekends because someone else's poor planning became your emergency. Basically, you influence your schedule. You're working because you choose to. This is actually something really big that I've talked about in just this a little bit, but that empowerment of choosing when you work, it's a big, big deal. Think about your current situation. When was the last time you could work when you wanted, how you wanted? When you work for yourself, you decide if you want to work for 10-hour days or spread your work across 7 days. Want to take a Tuesday off to handle personal stuff? You don't need to ask permission or burn vacation days. Most people are going to want to ask this question. So let's just talk money, okay? As an employee, you hit those salary caps. There's a ceiling to what they'll pay you, no matter how much value you create for them. When you're outside of that system, though, you can unlock ways to work a lot less and make a lot more. You can charge what you're worth instead of accepting what HR decides you're worth. How? I've seen consultants double their effective income, even accounting for those additional expenses that they have. Some, like myself, have gone even further, like way further. It's not just about the money. It's about control over the work itself. If you do this right, you get to choose the projects that interest you, challenge you, that align with your career goals. You're not stuck maintaining these legacy systems because that's what the company needs, only to decide to go another direction next week and leave you out to dry. You can learn what interests you when it serves your goals, not when it fits into somebody else's training budget. Now, there are some things you need to know about working for yourself. First thing, you need to know how to set your own price and understand your true market value. We're going to be talking about that a lot in the coming months, by the way. This isn't about like guessing or hoping. You need to research what contractors in your field, in your specialty, actually charge, not what employees make. Okay, let's do a reality check. If you're making $80,000 as an employee, you should be charging, as a self-employed person, at least $60, $70 per hour as a contractor, minimum. Why? Because companies were actually spending about $120,000 on you when you factor in benefits, payroll taxes, office space, equipment, HR costs, insurance, all that kind of stuff that they're covering on your behalf, basically. Like I said, I'll talk about this more in a video I'll link at the end here, but honestly, there's a lot of other things you need to consider as well. But the gist of it here is that people are paying for you and you don't realize it. And when you're self-employed, that means that you need to charge that much because those are going to be something you're going to be paying for. We'll talk about a little more in a bit. But let me tell you about travel. Travel is going to be much more likely. And I'm not talking about the occasional like conference you go to. I mean real travel. So for almost 10 years, I was like flying out Sunday, working Monday through Thursday, and then flying home Thursday night, then doing it all over again the next week. Some people love this lifestyle. Others hate it. You need to know which camp you're in before you make the leap, really. Fortunately, I found out that I'm rarely traveling these days, but the raw reality is that being on site is far more effective, and I think companies will soon be waking up to that reality soon. In other words, for people that are doing contracting work, it's very possible that this whole work from home thing might be coming to an end soon, and people will start demanding you be there on site because it's more effective. I'm just saying it like it is. Hasn't happened to me yet, but it's likely to. But there's more. The business side of this, in other words, you being a business, it isn't optional anymore. You're not just an IT professional when you're independent. You're running a business. That means understanding contracts, invoicing, collections, in my case, marketing, and sales. It means learning about business insurance, professional liability, legal structures. You can't just be good at technology anymore and hope to be independent. If you want to learn this stuff, probably best to just go work for someone who does this. And, that's a good way to learn a lot of this as far as the ropes of it and be mentored and take the leap eventually. Here's another thing. Taxes become your responsibility in a whole new way. You need to set aside at least 25% of everything you make, sometimes more. Quarterly estimated payments become part of your routine, sometimes even monthly payments, depends on how you're structured. And I'm not an accountant or a tax lawyer, talk to somebody else. But anyway, the good news is that in a lot of cases, you get to deduct business expenses like your home office, equipment, travel, professional development stuff, but you need to track everything and understand the rules. Now, for self-employed people, health insurance has more options than most people realize. They're usually just freaked out because it's something that comes to them as an expense now and they weren't used to paying it. Again, got to increase your rates. But you're not stuck with whatever your employer offers. You can get plans through professional associations, healthcare, sharing ministries like I do, or the marketplace in general. Yes, it costs more than the subsidized employee plan to you, but you have control over your coverage and kind of balance it for whatever your needs are in your situation. In many cases like mine, it goes beyond that. You need to carry business liability insurance of upward to $2 to $5 million. Don't let me scare you too much with that. It's not as expensive as you think, okay, especially in IT. Now, let's talk about retirement. Retirement planning actually gets better when you're self-employed, believe it or not. You can contribute more to your retirement accounts if you have access to like solo 401ks, SEP IRAs. They have higher contribution limits, and you can invest in ways that weren't available through your employer plans. But again, hire an accountant who understands independent contractors. It's really important. Now, another thing that's important to say is that the feast or famine cycle is real. Some months you'll make more than you ever did as an employee. Other months, you might make nothing. That's why you need to charge more. That's why you're compensating for the times you're not working. The good news is you'll likely work less overall. The bad news is you need constant vigilance for your next opportunity. This is something just to say true confession time. I'm actually caught in a cycle like this right now where I thought there was a big opportunity that was coming and it's not coming. And so I need to actually now hustle a little bit to get the next opportunity as I'm recording this. But these are the kind of realities that we face. Third-party consulting companies can be a great stepping stone. So what this means, just to explain this really quick, is these are people that have contracts that you're fulfilling on their behalf. So you're kind of like called white labeling their services. And so you're basically working for them, contracting with them, and then they sell your services to somebody else. This is actually how I did this with Citrix for a long time. They take a cut of your rate, but they handle all the sales and marketing for you. So they find the clients, they negotiate the contracts, and handle all the administrative stuff and just hand you the work. So it ends up being less money per hour, but it's a way to like sample the independent world while building up your savings and learning the business side of things. For me, that's been the staple of my consulting and literally how I've generated more than $1 million in revenue. It adds up. And the nice thing about these third-party companies is they're always incentivized to keep you busy because, it's a big deal. There's more to it. If you want another video on that, just comment below and I'll be sure to make some specific content for that. I'm happy to do it. But here's some things that nobody told me when I was going into independent self-employed contracting, especially the debt story. I ended up maxing out 3 credit cards, and it wasn't because I was living beyond my means. It's because the travel expense cycle that was in place there that nearly broke me financially. Here's how that worked. Every Sunday, I was on a plane to a new location, hotels, meals, rental cars, all that were going on my personal credit cards. So I'd work Monday through Thursday, fly home Thursday night, and get sent to a completely different city the next Sunday. Like I said, they're working hard to keep you busy. So they worked for me week after week, month after month. But the companies I worked with, they did promise quick reimbursement, quick air fingers quote, but the reality was a little different from my actual experiences. Expense reports would sit for weeks waiting for approval. Then they'd go through accounting. Then they'd wait for the next payment cycle. I'm talking like 45 to 60 days before I'd see that money back, sometimes longer, if there are any questions about receipts or the project had budget issues. Yeah, this is just the reality sometimes you face. And so I'm saying this not to discourage you, but to make sure you're ready for it. Eventually, yeah, I get paid, but it took a lot longer than I thought. And there were some bad things, and like interest was accumulating on those credit cards. Sure, I was earning a lot of airline miles and hotel points, but I was paying a lot more in interest charges than I wanted to. So I maxed out these 3 cards before I finally got smart about managing my cash flow. That stress of watching those balances climb while waiting for all those reimbursements to happen was something that I wasn't prepared for, but learned quickly. So working with consulting companies first. This is something that I kind of teased earlier, but this is not a bad option either. So in other words, you're going in as an employee. You can work with these companies first and kind of ease that transition. But you can also kind of sample the independent world while building up your savings in the process. So a lot of times they'll handle travel expenses differently, or they pay more quickly than direct clients because you're an employee. Even in some cases, they provide you with their own credit card. And you don't get the points, but hey, you know what? Sometimes it's good to just start somewhere knowing where it won't be your end. So now, as far as this is something that people often forget and maybe don't know as an option. And that is when you go independent, when you go self-employed and want to be a contractor, starting with your old employer as a contractor is often the smartest first move. So think about it. They just saved all the HR costs of keeping you on as an employee. They don't have to pay you benefits, payroll taxes, or deal with employment law compliance or anything like that. But you already know their systems, you know the people, you know their problems. It's a win-win situation, believe it or not. In a lot of cases, especially in IT, we're project-based. And so if they can not have you on as an employee, but bring you on whenever they have a new problem, a new system that they need to put in place or that sort of thing, that actually is something that's attractive to a lot of employers. So just because you ended or they ended their contract with you as an employee doesn't mean you can't come back to them and say, hey, if you'd like to hire me as a contractor, here are my rates. And you'd be shocked how many times that works. But we talked about this a little bit before, but what you want to be careful of is, again, charge at least 40% more than your salary equivalent would be. And don't feel guilty about this. This is something that I struggled with initially. Again, if you're an employee making $80,000, you were actually costing them around $120,000. That's still saving them money. So you're taking on the risks for those kind of other responsibilities. And so you need to be compensated for that. Now, another key, and this is something that, again, I wished I would have had this possibility for myself, but really the way my particular journey worked, it just wasn't possible. But if you're thinking about making the shift to going full on independent or even just kind of halfway independent, there's still some things I want you to know. At first, I want you to wait until you have a full year of expenses saved up before making the leap. I can't stress this enough. Not a year of your old salary, a year of your actual living expenses. So this cushion isn't just for emergencies, it's for those gaps between projects. They're inevitable. So never let your savings drop below 3 to 6 months of expenses, even when you're established. That feast or famine cycle I talked about, it will test this. Trust me. When you're making great money, it's tempting to increase your lifestyle or assume the good times will continue. Don't do it. You got to keep that buffer. Even with good clients, 45 to 60 days is normal for being paid as well. I mentioned the expenses, but it's normal to see those kind of things happen because a lot of times they'll go off of business days. That's another reason to have those expenses saved up, is just to be ready for things like that. Again, I'm just telling you like it is. I don't want to scare you, but I just want to prepare you if you're looking at this potential role. A lot of times what confuses people is they get paid a lot of times after they finish the work. So you got to factor this into your cash flow planning. So you might finish a project in January, but you won't get paid until March or April. And again, what I mentioned before, that I don't have a contract that I thought I was going to have, that puts me in a little bit of a push to find other work or other things to do because I know there's going to be a delay in payment. But this is another thing that people don't even know to tell you, but I'll tell you. This is important. Take real vacations and yearly sabbaticals. This was one of the biggest mindset shifts for me. So an employee using up your vacation means there's a lot of days and hoping nothing urgent happened when you're gone. But when you're independent, here's something cool. Vacation can actually mean disconnecting because there's no employer expecting you to check email or anything like that. So if you plan ahead and you actually make your vacations in between those contract times, for example, then who's going to call you? You know, they don't have a contract with you. They can't call you. Isn't that cool? I think it's awesome. Now, I mentioned sabbaticals. These are real breaks where you're not working at all. Or if you are doing work, quote unquote, it's something different. So you're able to give your mind that kind of refreshing. And so in my case, maybe it's a month between contracts. Maybe it's 3 months every few years. You can afford to do this because you're charging appropriately for your time, remember. So these breaks aren't a loss. They're actually something you can see as necessary because I'll be honest, working for yourself can be tough, psychologically, emotionally, all those kind of things. And so having a sabbatical where you're just working on yourself, giving yourself time to heal, recover, and learn new things, it's really important. Now, kind of a success tip here for you if you are looking to be independent. I want you to practice learning to advocate for your client, regardless of who's paying for you. Advocate for the client. Now, this sounds kind of obvious, I guess, but it's actually harder than you think. Sometimes the company paying your invoice isn't the same as the team you're helping. So your loyalty should be solving that client's actual problems, even if it means having difficult conversations with the people signing your checks, because maybe they're the ones that provided the software and it was wrong, and you have to make them own up to it, basically. These are the kind of conversations that can be tough, but if you advocate for your clients, it's a win long-term. Boy, this one is a little bit tough. It's important to realize that long-term contracts aren't always better than short-term ones. Yes, they provide some income like predictability, but they can also trap you in situations that aren't serving your goals. Sometimes a series of shorter engagement gives you more flexibility, better hourly rates, and exposure to different challenges that advance your skills. And very often, long-term contracts also require exclusivity, so you won't always be able to work on other contracts on the side. A lot of the time, smaller strategic contracts build a better story. Speaking of strategic contracts, contract reading and writing skills are absolutely essential if you want to be self-employed. You can't just sign whatever they put in front of you. They're probably going to pressure you to that, by the way. Statements of work and scope documents determine whether you get paid for additional requests or work for free. In other words, to say that a different way, they determine what you're paid for, and if you're not paying attention to that, you could end up doing work that you don't get paid for. This has happened. Also, we want to talk about non-compete clauses. These kind of things can kill your ability to work in your specialty. And so you need to be careful what you're signing. There's a lot of laws in the United States that are changing about this, which is good. But, ooh, man, I have been caused long-term harm by some of these non-compete clauses that go into sometimes in the 7-year range. Like, they can get ridiculous. Intellectual property clauses might claim ownership of everything you create, even using your own tools and knowledge to do that. Time for another story. Why reading the contract matters. Quick story about why you need to get better at that. Back in 2019, I was about to publish 2 books. You've seen them, right? So when a company I was contracting with wanted me to retroactively sign an agreement that was far too broad and assigning all intellectual property that I'd developed over the entire time of my contract to them, I had to ask them to adjust it because that would basically include my books and work for other clients. But they refused, but they assured me that, it was just a formality. They had no intentions towards that. Here's the thing. That contract, being that it would violate IP from other companies, I just couldn't take that risk, even my own risk aside. Yes, the reality, you're likely to work for many people at once when you're doing this. It's something that gets a little confusing for people. Like if you looked on my LinkedIn status and I actually put all the people I was working for at the same time, you would freak out. But it can happen if you're independent and running a business like I am. So with this particular customer, our relationship ended that day. It was sad, but you have to be careful about these things. Having a lawyer on retainer, or at minimum having AI review your contracts, is a good first step, but ultimately you need to look out for you. There's another key to going fully independent and having your own customers. You have to find them. Invest at least 10% of your earnings in marketing. This isn't just like a website or business cards. It's about building relationships, attending conferences, creating content that demonstrates your expertise, and maintaining your visibility in your field. Most technical people hate this part, but it's not optional to get work, yes, but also at the rates you're setting. As I said before, if you don't want to do this, that's okay. Plenty of companies will let you work for them as a third-party independent contractor. But if you want to go fully independent, like I was saying, networking for referrals requires a different approach than like employee network. Traditional LinkedIn ain't going to work for you like you think. People need to know specifically how to send you business. I'm going to say that again. I actually had another video about this earlier, but people need to know specifically how to send you business. What kind of projects do you take? What size companies do you work with? What's your availability? Make it easy for people to refer you by being clear about what you do and who you help. Now, client testimonials and case studies become your resume, so to speak. So you need to be asking for them immediately after a successful project completion, when the value you delivered is fresh in everybody's mind. These testimonials close more deals than your technical certifications will, trust me. Like a lot more. Don't be shy about it. And don't skip this. I did for years, and I have absolutely regretted it. Now, this one is absolutely vital. Don't try to figure this out alone. Invest in coaching. Join entrepreneurship communities. The challenge of running an independent consulting practice is way different from being an employee. You need guidance. You need guidance from people that have walked this path successfully before you. So mastermind groups, specifically for consultants and for those that are full-time self-employed in general, can be incredibly valuable. So you're dealing with similar challenges around pricing, client management, business developing, that sort of thing. Learning from peers who are just a few steps ahead of you accelerates your success and really helps you avoid those expensive mistakes like I made. We'll be talking about that really soon, actually, in the very next video, as it turns out. So you can make this transition successfully. You really can. By now, I've seen hundreds of IT professionals move from employee to independent consultant, and the ones who prepare properly and get the right guidance thrive in ways they never imagined possible. The key is not trying to figure it out alone. Now, I'm making help available in multiple ways because I believe in supporting people through this transition. I offer direct coaching for those who want personalized guidance through the process. I'm also building mastermind communities where you can learn alongside peers facing similar challenges. There's even more support coming soon, probably by the time you're seeing this. Now, if you're ready to take control of your IT career, start building that financial cushion, learning the business skills you need, be sure to watch this next video that I describes a lot more about how I'm charging over $300 an hour for my services these days as an independent consultant. All right, stay blessed by the best and be a blessing all the rest. I'll see you over there.